A lot of the feedback that I've been getting is that they really want to understand a simple way that they can explain IP targeting to clients. And one of the beautiful things about what we do is that with online advertising, all of the other companies out there really make it overly complicated and try to confuse the advertiser. So, in order for us to kind of explain what we do at the simplest, most basic form, a physical address means an IP address. So, 437 West Jefferson really means 216.135.81.25. And the reason that that's important is that traditionally people have used postal mail to deliver direct mail offers, direct marketing offers, and the reality is that more and more people are moving to a online world, digital world that we live in, and so we need to be able to replicate that same direct mail strategy, but have a digital to delivery, and that's basically what El Toro has done by taking that physical address and mapping it to the modem or router. So in addition to having that physical mailbox on the outside of their house, that modem or router inside their home is now going to be an entry point. And to be clear, we're talking about display banners in pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll video ads. We are not talking about emails. These are display banners just like everybody else can sell. But the biggest difference between us and every other company that's out there is that we do not use cookies. So, you know, every other company is using online data for their targeting, which means they're looking at keyword behaviors, they're looking at site lists, they're looking at past behavior to make predictions about who that person on the other side of that screen is. The problem with that is that there are multiple people that tend to use a desktop computer and different browsers, and so those cookies can become layered on each other, which just kind of makes them not quite as accurate. And in addition to that, there's a lot of stuff that opens up when you use cookies. Now, not all cookies and bot traffic are bad, but Google is admitting publicly that about 60% of all web traffic is non-human, which means 6 out of 10 web visits are going to do your advertiser no good. So some of the potential risks that occur when using online cookies or pixels is that they can actually emulate human behavior. So they can click ads, navigate your website, view pages. They can even fill out form fills. And a lot of time when they have that little, gotcha text to, enter in this text to make sure you're not a robot, that's an example of why, this is so relevant, because they're implementing those types of processes to prevent non-human traffic from emulating that human behavior and filling out those forms. They can also recookie and repopulate themselves. They can also reinsert themselves into highly affluent segments that your advertiser will want to target. And in essence, there is nobody there to target. So they're purchasing a demographic or audience that doesn't exist. And there are some other companies that claim they are doing IP targeting. They use IP addresses with some of their targeting schema, but at the end of the day, they're actually matching cookies to that IP data. So, we take great pride in the fact that we are 100% cookie free. And, in addition to being cookie free, we have 4 patents pending. So a lot of other online companies will say that they're different with a lot of technical jargon and confusing products, but we are actually different. So we have 4 patents pending. The first one is our IP mapping algorithm. And what that does is it takes a physical address, runs that through our algorithm, which is just a complex equation that's looking at over 30 different data element points to make sure that we can hyper accurately map that IP so that we can target. Unless we have a 95% confidence level on a specific IP address matching to a physical address, we will not say that we can target it. Second is our RTB bidding system, or real-time bidding system. Previous to us creating this IP targeting product, it wasn't possible for advertisers to bid on IP addresses on the exchanges or demand-side platforms or wherever they use to launch their online campaigns. So we actually had to build our bidder and our system to integrate with AppNexus so that we would be able to bid on the IP addresses with our offline data as opposed to all of the online cookie data. Now, one interesting point about this is that this is all happening in fractions of milliseconds. And what we've been able to do with our system is actually get more bids and more quality impressions because we're faster in fractions of milliseconds. So our third patent is on our reverse append, which is very similar to retargeting, except it's a tangible physical version of it. So if somebody goes to your website and you have no idea who they are, there's an IP address tagged in with that person that's visiting your website. So what we can do is take that person's IP address and run it through that IP algorithm backwards, so go from an IP to a physical address. And that information is going to communicate directly with a direct mail house and send that site visitor a direct mail piece within 3 business days based on what they were looking at on your website. So it's highly relevant. And while the client or the target may think that it's a coincidence, the reality is it's a intentional strategy. So really exciting stuff. That's going to be available first quarter. Our fourth patent is on our polygon mapping tool, which makes possible, it's kind of drawing a geographic area on a map interface, and it will actually automatically pull all of the IP addresses within that geography. So this is what we use a lot with our captive audience product, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. But to kind of talk about what our forte, our bread and butter is, that is our B2C or house-to-house targeting. And, at the very simple level, what we do is we take that physical address list, which is a last name, a address, and 5-digit zip code. We run that through our algorithm and come back with a match rate. We approximate that for residential campaigns will match about 50%. So if you send us a list of 100,000 people, we'll map about 50,000 of those. Now, what's great about that is it creates a really good control group to kind of test against. So while half of them may have received the IP ads, the other half did not and received only the other marketing channels that you may have going on if you're doing an omni-channel approach. Now, before we actually upload these IP addresses to the exchange to launch the ads, we assign a privacy shield. And what that means is that instead of uploading the IP addresses to the exchange, we assign a unique identifier that associates each IP address so that we can serve these ads and protect our target's confidentiality or privacy. As I said, we match at about a 50% rate for residential campaigns, 30% for B2B by address, and if you give us more time on the B2B side, we can get that percentage up to 100%, but this 30% represents the percentage if you just ran it with the algorithm without having any conversation with us. Now keep in mind, when you're running a residential targeting campaign, there needs to be a number of 500 minimum targets matched to run that. This is just a visual to kind of show you what I'm talking about. So here we have the addresses, the name, and the zip code. 50% match rate is going to give us 50,000 people to target. Now, this is kind of going a bit deeper in terms of the way that the algorithm is actually working. So it's incorporating over 30 different public data elements to make sure that it's going to accurately map that IP address to a home address. Now, one example of how other forms of online targeting can fail with this regard is that I live in Louisville, but my IP address with AT&T has been hosted in Michigan and Texas recently. So for a few months, all of the ads that I would receive would be for Austin, Texas. That has since changed, and now all of the ads that I'm seeing are from Novi, Michigan, which is where my IP address is now being hosted. So all of these companies that are selling you online display and selling you geo-targeting are going based off the hosting address of where that IP is located. So with that campaign, you're going to have a lot of wasted impressions because the IP addresses are not actually in the geographic area that the advertiser is trying to target. So there's going to be a lot of waste with that. But with our IP algorithm, when it's looking at over 30 different data element points, we can identify and say, you know what, even though that IP address may be in Michigan, we know that based off of the other 29 plus elements that we're looking at, that IP address is actually located in Louisville. So at that point, we would determine whether or not we want to target it or not, depending on what the geography is that we're looking for. Now, one of the best things about us targeting real people and real households is our matchback analysis. So the way that this works is that the client would provide the sales data, essentially the name, address, and zip, just like they provided in terms of who we're going to target. We then cross-reference those two data sets and say, okay, well, we targeted these 50,000 people and these 5,000 people on the list purchased. Here's your ROI, or here's your true conversion list by name, and if the advertiser is willing to share revenue with us, we can actually provide them a dollar figure. Now, a reason that this is so important to use as a selling point or to use, period, is that if I see an ad, as an example, automotive, I'm in the market for a Jeep right now, and if I see an ad that has the right lease price, an offer that is appealing enough to me, if I saw that ad 30 times this month, but I never clicked it, never filled out a form, never called the call tracking number, never did anything except go to that dealership and make that purchase, every other online campaign would traditionally lose all attribution to that sale because I never technically entered the funnel. However, because of the matchback analysis, it doesn't matter if someone clicks the ad, fills out a form, or calls you. we can actually provide for you all of the sales data in terms of converted sales with our matchback analysis. You'll also be able to see the lift or the increase from IP targeting, again going back to that control group and target group. So on the screen here you can see that we targeted less people and had more conversions. And ultimately, people that received the IP ads were 108% more likely to purchase as opposed to people who did not. Now, we've spent some time talking about our house-to-house targeting, which really, is a specific address. Now we're going to talk about captive audience. And captive audience uses that polygon mapping tool to pull IP ranges and really deals with targeting venues where masses gather. So this can be hotels, trade shows, conventions, airports, key venues, and especially colleges and universities. We have over 95% of the country mapped, and we can target basically any college or university, which has been hugely successful. We run hundreds of campaigns for universities and colleges all across the country, and they going back to that matchback analysis, they love it because they can track their sales by name. Now, I've told you that the captive audience product will target venues where masses gather. Now, I want to give you a couple of examples of how to use it and how not to use it. Let's say I own 16 sports bars and I want to target the Super Bowl because I know all of these millions of people are going to be coming into the city. So you say I want to target the Super Bowl. That would be a terrible idea, and here's why. In order for us to serve them ads, they need to be connected to a Wi-Fi signal. At the Super Bowl, if there is a Wi-Fi signal, I can guarantee that it is going to be overflooded with traffic and the connection is going to be terrible. Now keep in mind the only time that we can actually show these guys ads is if they're viewing websites that there's third-party ad space inventory available. In most cases, when people are going to be at the Super Bowl, they're going to be using things like Facebook, like Snapchat, social media, pictures, bragging to their friends about the fact that they're at the game and you're not. So that would not be the correct implementation of captive audience. However, using the same example, if I do own 16 sports bars and I want to target the Super Bowl, what you're going to do as a rep is you're going to recommend that they target all the hotels around the Super Bowl. Target them a few days before, the day of before, the night after, so that you capture them while they are in that stage of trying to figure out where they're going to go, what they're going to eat, who they're going to see, because that's when they're going to be visiting websites, and that's when they're going to be engaged, and there's going to be inventory available to serve to them. Second example. Google's got a lot of employees, and if I wanted to reach just the CEO at Google, captive audience may seem like a good idea. However, if they have 5,000 employees there and I'm only looking to reach one of them, there is going to be a high amount of waste. And the likelihood of him seeing that ad is pretty low. And unless the messaging is so provocative that it goes viral internally, that it gets back to him, it's going to do you no good. So if you wanted to target the CEO of Google, you probably want to target other CEOs for other companies. Instead, what I would recommend is purchasing a list from a direct mail provider or data provider to get a list of CEOs across the country for the companies that you want and target those guys at home. Now, a great use of captive audience at Google would be if General Electric Appliances offers 25% off to all Google employees in the month of December for any appliance purchase. That would be a slam dunk home run implementation of captive audience because everybody on that site is going to be able to benefit from that offer. So the relevancy is high, which means the engagement is going to be high. And it's also a great offer. Who doesn't want a discount? So we'll talk about a couple case studies real quick. We do a lot of political campaigns. We've run over 400 political campaigns. And this is probably the one that we're most proud of, or one of them. The Kentucky Guild Brewers of Kentucky are essentially an organization that pulled together craft brewers. And there was some legislation on the table to basically change some distribution channels. And Anheuser-Busch was pushing pretty hard. And it was really going to impact these guys. And, it's one of those David Goliath situations where Anheuser-Busch has deep pockets. And the craft brewers had kind of a very big hill to climb. And so they actually looked to us and did 100% digital. Actually were able to target key legislative and state capital offices, as well as target high-fidelity voters at home in key areas. So we actually ended up winning and beating Anheuser-Busch, despite the fact that Anheuser-Busch spent over $200,000 on marketing, and the craft brewers spent less than $50,000. So very powerful stuff with that. Smooth Fitness. So these guys were selling high-end fitness equipment at home, and the value of every conversion was about $900. So they were able to generate over $15,000 with this campaign. Another big category that I see a huge opportunity for are home services and home goods. That could be windows, that could be bathrooms, kitchens, flooring, you name it. I mean, the beautiful part about what we do with IP targeting is, first of all, these industries are using direct mail because they can pull things like the income levels, the demography, the age of house, the age, the seasonality. So it's taking all of these factors and all these attributes and then coming together for a really good campaign. So, this was for a national window writer, and because we know that, for 20 years a home is going to need to replace the windows, we're able to hyper accurately target people based off of who owned the home, what their income was, and that house being 20 plus years old. So this was a regional test. It went so well that they are in fact rolling this out nationally. So this is just windows, but the same strategy can be replicated for all things home or service related. Higher education is probably one of the best categories for us in addition to political because of the high value per acquisition. So, on average, a student can be worth anywhere between $2,000 and $3,000 per conversion. And the fact that we have our matchback analysis and we can really leverage the granularity of the data in terms of ACT scores makes our product highly relevant to them because they can start segmented messaging based off of them scoring a certain level on the ACT or below a certain level on an ACT. So again, leveraging that information so that the messaging is extremely relevant to that target. I use the word granularity a lot, which I don't know if it's a word, but it is now. And that's really what our product does. Is it lets us get down to that really, really deep level or find that needle in a haystack.